a common problem that we see in a lot of companies is that improvement projects are being done. Their sources are from various areas. They could come from value streams that have been analyzed, strategy, deep problems that people have had that they're trying to fix. So after a while, there's a collection of projects. And every so often, there's a need to synchronize that and see if how they prioritize match the current strategy. Nancy will talk about a project hopper concept where you can select those projects and prioritize them. And then once you've done that, then for a specific project, how can you work on it in a systematic way with metrics and show what you deliver at the end. So there, she'll take a particular project and look at a systematic approach with lean, value stream mapping, and so forth. Nancy, if you could turn over the slide. So a little bit about Nancy, one of our favorite people. We've known her for many years, first as a client, and in the last few years as a independent lean consultant with such lean solutions out there. You'll get to know her, I think, through this presentation, but also this is, I think, maybe her third or fourth with us. So we have prior blogs from her. If you visit the blog section on the EVSM website, you'll see her there as well. She's worked for some of our clients recently. Knowledge is top notch, so I recommend it to you. Nancy, welcome and thanks again for presenting to our group. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dash. So our topics today, we're going to cover collecting diverse, new, and existing projects into a single hopper, prioritizing that collection in the hopper based on our strategy, and get into some mapping and visualization in support of a prioritized project. We'll go through an actual case study and then step into a question and answer period. So what's the problem? Really, when you have a lot of projects coming in from many sources, it's difficult to understand what to work on and how to do it systemically. Typically, ideas are captured on multiple lists, right? Who doesn't have a monitor full of sticky notes? Guilty, right? My monitor's full of them, but that's not where pending projects need to live. Often, the project prioritization is from the hip and really not data driven. It's unclear across the value streams who's working on what. Then you have value stream maps that could be handwritten, either non-existent or in an Excel format. What's the solution? Creating a master project hopper with standardized scoring metrics that are tied to your strategic plan, and then using the digital maps to work systemically on prioritizing those projects. Where do you start? Well, you want to collect all the project lists in one place. And when you have a lot going on, it's really difficult to understand where you start. This gives you that base. So typically we would gather the leadership team and collectively compile a list of all the active and all the planned projects for the plant. You want to collect all those lists in one place. And as you can see, right, it kind of shows that it's a whirlwind of activity, and these projects are coming from everywhere. There's your Hoshin matrix that's coming into it, which in this specific case, it was our organization strategic plan. The Gemba walks, ideas from the Gemba walks, sticky notes on Jay's computer, corporate-driven initiatives, engineering-related projects, quality projects, value stream specific, Pete's pet projects, and just anything is building into this hopper. You want to try to control it and get it all in one place. Now you have this hopper full of these projects that you built with your team, and you got them all in one place. Now what do you do with it? You develop metrics that are in line with your organization's strategic plan. In this case, they tie back to the Hoshin matrix because that's what we had used at the time to guide and develop and implement our strategic plan. You can use whatever works for you in your team, and I would assume that all organizations are just a little different. Then you determine weights for the metrics, and the weights should be assigned according to how important that metric is to your strategic goal. Once you have the weights assigned, you can assign an improvement scale. And the improvement scale should really have firm criteria. Good, better, best just does not work here, right? You want to have a numeric scale that you can assign to that. Now you have a starting point for ranking your projects. All you really need to do is fill in a yellow box for each project on a list, and you'll have a calculated score total. This, what I'm showing on the screen, it's an abbreviated sample. And your metrics and weighting will be far different, right? It needs to reflect what's important to you and to your strategic plan and your leadership team. It's also easier to do all of this within the project helper itself or hopper itself, so all the items are aligned together.
Nancy, let me just stop you for a second. If you could go back to that sheet. When I looked at that presentation, this is the one that I know I had some confusion and I asked you some clarification questions. But just to make sure, so this is something that you develop with the leadership. You say, all right, so right now our focus is on, if it's customer responsiveness, let's say your focus could be on lead time reduction. So this is how you created that lead time reduction column, saying that's an important thing for our company right now. There could be similarly a cost reduction column if you feel like you need to have a much more economic path, right? And then the weighting factors at the top. So right now you've got the highest weighting factor on lead time reduction. So that weighting factor is going to get multiplied by the project score. Is that right? So this is and how long does this take? Is this something that you would do in a meeting with leadership and update? What's your experience with that?
Building the cheat sheet, we would do with the leadership team in a meeting. Once you have that cheat sheet built and trying to prioritize and add a score for all these different metrics for all the different projects is a bit of a lengthy project. And it depends how many metrics that you're going to decide are important to you. This is a very abbreviated version of the actual hopper that we used. We had 9 or 10 metrics on there. And to get through 9 or 10 metrics, for a hopper that's full of 150 projects, it can take quite a while. So you might want to even be careful.
Yeah, so I guess the cheat sheet with the leadership, and then this becomes as you say, a static cheat sheet that when people are looking at projects, they can use this sheet to say, well, for our company and where we are, something greater than 4 weeks, which is one of your rows, constitutes a score of 9. With respect to that lead time reduction, right? So
correct.
So, and I guess you would modify this, update this maybe once a year as your company changes, as your priority changes. But then essentially this is static. You kind of put it on the wall, and as you're prioritizing projects, you just reference this back to figure out which of the scores in column 1, the 9310, you're going to give it, right?
Correct. And your plan's not going to stay your plan for the whole year, right? There's going to be new projects that work their way into your hopper, and using the cheat sheet is a good way for the team to understand what type of scoring they think their project's going to hit, right?
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Go ahead.
So this is an example of a fully populated prioritized hopper. We worked with our team to populate it and assign a score for each metric using the metric scoring cheat sheet. And that guided our input numbers in the light gray. So the light gray is where we're inputting with the team what we feel like that project, and not feel like what we think that project rates based on our cheat sheet that we built. Those are the numbers that'll work with the weighting to calculate a total project score over in the dark gray. In this example, the lead time reduction and inventory reduction metrics have the highest weighting, and you can see them circled up here in red. And that is what's driving that weighting, the high scoring of this particular top project. Once you have this whole hopper complete, you really have a clear plan for project prioritization that's driven by the vision and not just today's problem, right? And that's always a problem, right? Everybody's very busy putting out fires, and you lose sight of these strategic projects. So this helps refocus your team on where you should be going. Not that you don't have to fight those fires, you do, but this will help you get back on track. And you can note for later, you can see the highest scoring project here is to reduce lead time at the cap and plug cell. This is when our fun begins, right? We start making EVSM for all these priority projects and begin our improvement process. This slide really shows a bird's eye view of EVSM map. And the map provides the canvas for our Kaizen problem and solution identification, the chart creation, and drives the what if analysis that's, in this case, data driven now because we have this in EVSM. What are the benefits? Well, the Hopper helps us align our projects with our organization's strategic plan. Prioritizing projects and digital value stream maps guide the way for our database decision making. And it provides our leaders now with a clear and actionable insight to hit the strategic goals. It gives them a direction. When we jump into the case study, we'll see that the case study is a priority project to reduce lead time at the cap and plug cell. We chose the highest scoring Hopper project because it hits multiple high weighted metrics that were tied to our strategic plan. Again, you can see the high weighting up here in red. And when we scored this project, it was the top scoring project. When we looked at cap and plug cell, we saw our problems were long lead times, excessive inventory on the floor, and we had complaints tied to our missed deliveries. You can see in this flow chart down here, the cap and plug cell, they're very similar operations. There's just one extra operation in the plug than the cap has. So as always, we started this with putting together a project profile. And if that's something that's new to you or you're not familiar with, as Delesh mentioned, there's past webinars that dive a little deeper into that. You can go look into that. But our cap and plug cell is a work group located within the value stream. Our project timeline, we thought with this slide that we could shorten this workshop up a little bit because we already had a map ready to present, but it really wasn't in the best format. And we were able to focus on just improvements instead of building this big sticky note map. On day one, we said we can review the problem statement, gather some real-time inventory counts, run some current state time studies, and validate the current state map that we had used. That's easier said than done. There was a lot of data that this core team needed to go out and capture, and that took us a good day. Day two, we planned to do a floor walk, talk to the team, observe the process, brainstorm some improvements, and build a plan to implement our improvements, along with gaining approval from our leadership team. Day three was all about putting a plan together. We were going to, run with our plan. Then we needed to build spreadsheets and operator training, and build a new machine schedule. So all in all, we thought 3 days would be good for this project. The problem with our current state value stream map is we had the data, but it wasn't in a format that helped us see what was going on. And there were some issues with that. We had 2 separate maps, one for the cap and one for the plug, and they were both built in Excel. So it was showing, it had limitations on the data we could see with it. There were no charts for capacity or lead time or resource balance, and it was hard, if not impossible, to do the what if studies that we like to do so much with EVSM. So we transformed the maps with the EVSM to a single digital mixed model map. The data was pulled from the existing maps. The project team confirmed with all the time studies and the counts. Now we have a much nicer map, and it provides charted data to help us see the problems. What was it telling us, though, now that we have all these nice charts? Well, the capacity and demand chart looked okay, right? There was plenty of capacity at all our stations. The resource balance shows some extra time with the machining resource, but that really shouldn't be anything that's going to hurt our process, having extra time. And the time study is, or the time summary is what was really starting to raise some eyebrows. We had an 8.5 week lead time that was excessive for this process. And when we looked at the lead time ladder, we see that the bulk of that lead time is non-value added, which is shown in the orange bar going across. The blue bar that you can barely see anywhere on that ladder is the value added time. So we said, well, we really need to question that and go back and see what's going on there. So we went back into our EVSM and looked through the map. And our map review showed a really high inventory in many of the locations, but an alarming amount after machining of 2,200 pieces. And for this process, that was a lot of parts. And then we saw an 8% scrap rate that we were showing at inspection. So we took our team, we took a process walk out on the floor, and we talked to the team on the floor and observed what was actually going on with the process. We discovered that, through speaking with the operators and observing what was going on, that the machines were always set on a high priority list. So the operators just kept running those machines without regard to the inventory or the WIP they were building up. And if you remember from the resource balance chart, they had extra time in their day. So it didn't matter, right? You might as well just keep running. And it's really a common misconception that running as many parts as you can is a good thing in case you have problems. It's usually not. Then we took a look at the scrap in the process and went back and talked to the inspectors and the operators. And we found through kind of bringing everybody together that the scrap was actually being initiated at the machining sequence, but it wasn't found until weeks later when the parts finally hit the inspection, that we were building scrap at machining. It was really a lot to uncover. You can see in the slide just below the map, we have the ability in EVSM to bidirectionally download the Kaizen bursts and enter directly into a spreadsheet. It's just, it's just highlighted there to make you aware of it and to know that just makes it a bit easier to get your data into the map. Then we started our future state map and began dragging Kaizen solutions bursts onto the map. And that put us to where we're starting our improvement plan. We brainstormed with the team to develop solutions to the problems and scored the Kaizen impact matrix export. And you can see that that's down here also. Like I said, it's bi-directional. You can import it and export it. When we charted the matrix, we found that implementing a WIP cap had a high impact with low effort. High impact, low effort, that's a win-win, right? Everybody wants to go after those types of projects. So we worked to develop a detailed plan with the team to shut down the cap and plug machine until the inventory was gone. All that inventory was really what was causing a lot of our problems with the lead time and catching the scrap so late. That was not, as you can imagine, a popular decision. People like to be productive, and producing parts makes them feel that way. Needless to say, we needed high-level approval for the leadership team to get those machines shut down. So we worked on that also. You can see on the map and the matrix, there's only 4 solutions here. And, it was a pretty short project. It was only 4 days. Our intention was to work through all of these solutions, but understand the benefits of collecting it all on the map, right? To throw all this on the map, it's valuable to have all your information in one spot. Then we began the improvements, and I realized this chart is a bit hard to look at, but it's the cell standard work and pattern plan that included both the cap and the plug. The y-axis on the left is the parts required per week. So in this case, we needed 240 parts per week. And the x-axis on the bottom is the actual routing the parts are going through. You can see we have both the cap and plug being tracked through the primary machine, the EDM, which was their secondary machine, deburr and tumble. The machine operator in this case, and this is part of our pattern, runs the primary machine and the secondary machine as a group now until the goal is reached, and then they move to the next product. The deburr and the tumble do the same thing. It's as easy really to track as coloring in a box. You don't need a $100,000 machine monitoring system to do this. You need some dry erase markers and a piece of paper. And you can see where third shift ran and colored, and I think this is 45 pieces. So they just put in how many they ran and the person who ran them, and the following shifts do the same till they hit the 240 pieces, and then they move to the next column. What does that do for you? It creates a self-scheduling machine and finishing cell. There's no question now what needs to be worked on and how many pieces you need for the week until maybe the demand changes from the customer. So putting this in place was also the beginning of our visual management cube and a display cube for the team. It's huge when you have this data out on the floor that the people can look at and work through. WIP caps, they can be as easy as taking away all those storage shelves you have on the floor and adding a simple product appropriate WIP area with signage. The results post-improvement were impressive, really, once we started knocking out some of the non-value added time. The current state started at a lead time of 8.5 weeks, which you can see in this top chart. Once we worked through in that WIP cap and implemented the WIP cap and worked through the existing WIP was there, we knocked that lead time down to 4.6 weeks. Controlling the point of overproduction at the machine by putting that WIP cap in also forced the reduction of WIP at all the downstream processes. So all the WIP, not just at that station, all the WIP came down. And when the rest of that WIP came down, our lead time ended up at less than 2 weeks. It's not always about the cost savings. In this case, our main drivers were the lead time and the inventory reduction. But we went from an 8.5 week lead time to less than 2 weeks. Our scrap dropped from 8% to 3% because we were able to detect it and correct the defects faster. We didn't have to go through all that WIP in the process to get back to the point of where the problem was being caused. The visual management that we implemented in the cell actually showed an increase by 4% due to just monitoring the process, right? They say you can't improve what you don't measure. And when you start measuring things and you start understanding where you are, they just started getting better now. It was just a natural reaction. And it might not always be just cost savings that we're going after, and it wasn't in this case, but we just so happened to walk away with a nice little savings of over $80,000 annually.
Nancy, let me just stop you for a second. If you can go back to the prior slide, just to summarize what we did so far, because I think you've gone to 3 levels of it now. So it looks like in the beginning, you were collecting improvement projects, no matter the source, from strategy, prior value stream discussions, problems that you found, etc.
Correct.
And then so that discussion was about the project hopper, putting everything in one place. Then you had a discussion about using the current strategy to create a cheat sheet to come out with how to rank each project. And then you ended up with ranking those things. And then out of those, a few projects come up as the clear winners from the ranking. And so the second half of your presentation is taking just one of those projects, I think the cap plug, right? And then now you're detailing out to how can I execute this with metrics And then presumably this saving that you've identified then go back, they get a report back to leadership saying, hey, here's what we thought we could do with this. Here's where we are now on our key metrics. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
And
Okay, perfect.
and with this particular project, I'm not sure we even thought there would be a cost savings going into it. It wasn't what we were going for. We were trying just to understand why the lead time was so long. And creating all that extra WIP is where our cost savings came from, or removing the creation of all that extra WIP. So it's a bonus. It's a bonus. And then when we complete this project, we go back to the hopper and say, well, what's next? What's next for this team? And the hopper, and we didn't spend a lot of time on it, but it's totally filterable. You can filter by the value stream. You can filter by the team. You can filter by the project category.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So this whole project's a lot of work, right? And all projects really are. And we wanted to make sure we captured the savings and tracked the savings as we're going through the year after we did put all this work in. This is an example of a pretty simple tracker that gets populated from the actual floor data at the end of the month. Right now that we have their visual management cube in place, they're collecting all the data on a daily and a weekly basis. At the end of the month, we pull that data and we calculate what our monetary savings were. And this allows us to track the savings over a 12-month period. So you can make something like this tracker as simple or really as complex as you think you need. But I can tell you from experience, if it gets too complex, you're going to end up with a monster of a tracker that's almost impossible or very difficult to manage. So I like to keep them on the simpler side. Summary of the case study. What did we do? We reviewed and quantified our existing maps. We transitioned our Excel maps to an EVSM mix. We targeted key efficiencies and high WIP and high scrap and inspection during our map review. Built a pattern plan to run the cell. Implemented a WIP cap, metric tracking, standard work. And that, implementing those items, that kicked off the visual management cube for our cell, which was huge. That produced sustainable results that reduced our lead time, created a self-scheduling cell pattern, reduced our scrap, and implemented visual management and standard work. Oh, sorry about that. Here's our bonus for today. It's really viewing costs and tracking savings within EVSM. Cost can be easily viewed within EVSM, and I'm not really sure what Dilesh calls it, but I refer to it as the eye up on your top toolbar. It'll hide and show the variables within your centers. So if you open the eye and you scroll down, I checked the added product cost and added unit cost within these variables to make them visible on my map. Then I went into the map and I entered the fully burdened resource rate and all the resources and added the unit cost in any applicable activity center. In this case, the added unit cost came in at machining as the material cost. When you then resolve your map, you can look at your last sequenced activity center and it has your calculated cumulative unit cost. In this example, and it's down here, it was $19 and $20 for each of the pieces. And is that good? It depends on the price you're selling the product for and the target profit margin. That's really for you and your finance department to figure out, but it gives you the data you need.
Thanks, Nancy. Really appreciate that. You know, this most of our webinars kind of start in at an EVSM map. So I really appreciate you taking a wider view here, where you started off with just improvement projects in general before you ended up detailing a particular value stream and you went back to kind of the EVSM route. I think that's a problem that almost every company would have, is how to just manage all these ideas out there and get the best out of them. So I think it's very useful. Several questions, Nancy, online. A detailed one first. Andrew had asked if what was the scrap due to that you ended up reducing? Do you remember? What was the root cause for the scrap?
It was a scrap that was being generated at the machining sequence. I don't know what specifically it was, but it was something that wasn't detectable until the parts got all the way down to QC. So then there's just no communication between QC and in the machining area saying, hey, you guys are at 8% scrap. Or maybe they know they're at 8% scrap, but nobody really knows where it's coming from. And we managed to isolate it to the machine, and knowing that it was happening at the machine gave us the ability to target it at the machine. So it didn't get down. It didn't go anywhere, right? It was caught at the machine, and there's no width in between those two stations that you need to work through.
No, that's great. Sean had asked or wanted to confirm that the spreadsheets you're talking about, you talked about three, I think, that are outside EVSN. The first one was the cheat sheet, where you work with the leadership to develop the scoring. The second one was the project hopper itself. And the third one was the tracker, where you say, well, each month, what do I expect? Those are all
Yep.
outside EVSN. They're not
Correct.
the software itself. Yeah.
No.
And are any of those going to be downloadable from your website, or is that possible, Nancy?
Yeah, there is a full workbook that you can find on my website under resources, and it has all the documents contained within the one workbook under resources. So if you go to the resource tab, it's right there. And
Okay.
look through the different tabs. I think there's 6 or 7 different tabs. There's a couple different examples of the cost tracker. Because everybody likes a little something different.
No, that's great. Did you have formal OEE measurements on the map? Did you use a formal OEE model with downtime and scrap and things like that? How did it work out for that cell and plug cell?
Yes, the OEE increased. So we saw an OEE increase, and not that we targeted it, but when we started just watching the cell and trying to understand what was going on in there, I think when you put eyes on something, maybe behavior changes a little bit, right? If people don't know where they are, they don't know where they want to get to, right? So understanding where the OE was led to just naturally it being improved. And it was improved through, again, all the WIP, not having all the scrap, not having all that scrap increases your OE significantly.
So, when I was looking at the various areas of difficulty and who's involved, when you got down to the value stream map itself for a detailed project, this was kind of the OPEX team and the people involved in the process, walking the floor and so forth. So I've kind of done that many times. I could imagine how that worked. I was a bit more daunted by this, I must admit, the front end with the cheat sheet, which is, getting those people wrestled down and getting them to assign scores and things like that. But I guess, you could do that without them, but then since in the end they've got to make the decisions, it wouldn't have nearly as much value, right? It's worth
No. You need your leadership team. You absolutely need the leadership team, because you're going back into your strategic plan that you built to understand how you're going to weight it and what kind of metrics you want to track these projects to. You can't do something like that on your own. You need your leadership team to help guide that. And when you say wrestle, Dilesh, it's not easy, right? It's not an easy task to do, and it is a bit like wrestling. But once you get it done and you get it implemented, it's so worth it, right? Because now you have this master plan that each value stream can drive. If you looked back at this, which way are we looking at? You can see over here, the value stream is one of the filterable categories, and you can filter that by value stream. So it can be value stream specific, that they know what their priorities are, but it also gives you the bigger picture to understand where you're targeting your shared resources. Maintenance might not have any direct projects on this list, but I can bet you that they are assigned to 80% of them.
Okay.
And
yeah.
that's where it gets helpful.
So you had two levels of priorities here. So with the Project Hopper, there was the priorities tied back to strategy. And then once you got into the value stream map, you were using a simple impact difficulty kind of Kaizen matrix. So,
Yes.
so two levels. So even within a detailed project, of course, there's choices then of what you improve. There's no end of that. So I think this whole area, how do I choose wisely? And so I'm working on the right stuff is kind of a key aspect of lean, value stream mapping in general, that bird's eye view, and make sure that I'm not just working hard, but I'm working on the right stuff. So again, really appreciate that discussion. The other one that kind of occurred to me, and in the past, I've generated improvement ideas myself over my career. One of the good things I think about the Project Hopper would also be that these ideas are generated, you can see where they end up. They don't end up disappearing into some cloud, and then you can see the prioritization, high or low. There's some visibility. I think if there's visibility to where your ideas are going, it would only encourage people to suggest more ideas, right?
Absolutely. And we would post the whole Project Hopper so people understood it. And each team managed was responsible for managing their own top projects. Right? So through a group hopper, they could go into the hopper and look at just their projects and understand what they're working on. So yes, it's all in one spot, but you don't have to look through all 150 projects to understand where your value stream priorities lie.
Yeah, that makes sense. This whole involvement with the leadership, getting people to come up with the improvement ideas, being metrics based, all of it feels like, depending on where the company is, it would require a culture shift, to align with a lot of this thinking as well, right?
Well, yeah, I guess it depends where your company sits. But boy, it's a great place to start because I can tell you, I don't care how big your company is or what your culture is, there's likely to be all these projects that people are either working on or want to work on, and it's almost like herding cattle, right? You want to get everybody into one spot and understand the bigger picture. It's a great place to start, right? If you're just starting your lean journey, it gives you the ability to tie back into your strategic plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Nancy, there's been quite a few requests, so I'll kind of go through them for the presentation itself. So we'll convert this into a blog and we'll post that.
Okay.
It'll be posted on your site, Such Lean Consulting. It'll be posted at EVSM, and then also Herman's posted on the chat the direct link to your website where they can find some of these templates and so forth. Really appreciate the session again, Nancy. I think it was really valuable. Look forward to doing more with you.
Great. Thanks, Dilesh. Thanks for attending, everybody.
Yeah, I really appreciate the audience, and we'll try and do monthly webinars this year. This is our first kickoff one, so we'll be advertising those. And if you have ideas yourself for what webinars you'd like to see, feel free to either email us at support@evsm.com, just get in contact with us, and we'll take it from there.
Great. And if you did see a document you want used that you can't pull off my website, you can just send me an email. I have no problem sending those out.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Celeste.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.